People have heard stories of Wendigo, night walkers, stalkers, etc. One of the most realistic possible occurrences that could happen is a kidnapping, whether it be of yourself, a loved one, or a child. And it would be something that stuck with you for the rest of your life. The following stories are all instances of kidnappings or attempted kidnappings. So sit back and enjoy the terror. Number 1. I believe it goes without saying that every parent's worst nightmare is losing their children. 3 days ago, that nightmare became a reality for me as I took a single bite of Santa's cookie and went upstairs to wake my two boys up. My youngest Clyde had already been awake and sitting patiently on his bed, eagerly awaiting my signal to head downstairs and start opening gifts. This was not all too surprising. What 12 and 7-year-old boys sleep Christmas morning? What was surprising was that Jack's bed was empty. He was nowhere to be found, despite my tucking him in his bed and wishing him good night around 9 p.m. last night. The detectives are supposedly still investigating, but I'm fully aware of the horrifying statistic that after the first 48 hours of being missing, the chances of finding my son become very slim. I'm also quite sure that they still consider me as a suspect, although their initial investigation failed to prove that. Earlier today, while helping Clyde with his math homework, I threw one of his little Nerf footballs across a room, and after a couple bounces, it became lodged between the wall and Jack's bed. I walked on over and pulled the bed away from the wall a bit to retrieve it. That's when I noticed the loose floorboard. I don't understand how this was missed by both myself and the detectives that scoured his room, but it was quite obvious once I did notice it. I believe what I found in there may have something to do with Jack's disappearance. Being a single father of two and working a full-time job left me very little time, especially around the holidays, to carry on many different Christmas traditions that I had as a child. So on the first day of December, when I first saw the little raggedy looking elf on a shelf, I was very impressed that Jack had took it upon himself to start this tradition for his little brother. When I had first asked him about it, his demeanor changed drastically and he demanded that no one ever touch the elf. I left it at that. After all, the story says the elf will lose its magic if touched by a human. I didn't want to ruin it for Clyde, so I just played along. Each morning, the little elf would show up in a new spot in our small home. I was so proud of my boy for being such a great big brother. The reason I bring the elf up is because of what I found under the floorboard in his room was some kind of homemade children's book titled Elf on a Shelf. It was written crudely with different colored markers for each letter, although clearly written by someone with very shaky handwriting. I had handed the book over to the detectives, but not before writing down a copy for myself. I really didn't know what to make of it, but I know it has something to do with whoever took my son. The book was titled Elf on a Shelf, and it read as following. Have you ever wondered how anyone could know if you're naughty or nice each year as you grow? For hundreds of years, it's been a big secret. It now can be shared if you promise to keep it. This year you were chosen, he has sent me to you. I watch and report on all that you do. My job's an assignment from the big man himself. I'm just his helper, a little scout elf. While I'm here visiting the place you call home, remain in your room, be sure not to roam. Once you are ready, the mission can start. Whose name will you scream as he rips out your heart? Will it be Father or Clyde? He can't take you all, so you must decide. Each night while you're sleeping, to your room he will fly. No one can know, or else they will die. Of course, a little magic helps me be quick. I record your whole day and report with a click. I tell him if you have been good or been bad. News of the day makes him happy or sad. One word about this, and I'll report to the boss. But keeping the secret will not be a loss. In the car, at the park, or even at school, word will get out if you break a rule. He will be gone before you awake. Speak a word to anyone, and your brother he'll take. You'll jump out of bed and come running to see who'll be the first to beg and to plea. Maybe in the kitchen, the bathroom, or the den is where you'll find dear Clyde met his end. I can hide on a plant, a shelf, or a frame. Where will I be? Let's make this a game. There's another important rule you must know. Choose to ignore it and his rage will grow. Keep your window unlocked before you climb into bed. Think wonderful thoughts inside your little head. How else can he check how good you have been? He might start to think you forgot about him. The night before Christmas, my job's at an end. The rest of the year in paradise we'll spend. So blow them a kiss and bid them farewell. We'll fly far away, but you can never tell. Of course I will miss you, but wait till next year. When holidays come, I'll again reappear. I wish every girl and every boy a safe place to hide. Until next year, when I visit young Clyde. I'm only posting here out of complete desperation. If anyone knows anything that could help me locate my son, please message me right away. Number 2. This is a true story. When I was 6, my dad died. We lived in a bad neighborhood in Peoria, Illinois at the time. My father's name was Dave Hagen. It was extremely difficult because not only did he commit suicide, but I had found him. My mom, we'll call her Lori, has schizoaffective bipolar disorder, was sent to a psychiatric unit because she was so traumatized by the events that she became unable to care for herself. She was only 31 and also had a recent hysterectomy due to cervical and uterine cancer. In a whist, I went from happy living with my parents, sister, and our Rottweiler named Baby to only having my sister Courtney and our maternal grandparents, Bill and Betty. We moved to a new town, Lombard, got rid of our dog, and for several months lived with my grandparents. They were 71 and 75, due to how late in life they adopted my mom. It was a nice enough place to live. They had a huge house, lots of toys, and a huge yard. I had friends down the block who we would see all the time, and they were very nice. However, I had to be pulled from school due to what I had recently been through, and I was experiencing a lot of bullying because I went to Catholic school. For reference, in Catholicism, it is seen as a sin to self-harm, and will damn you to hell if you die by suicide. So I had spent many hours toiling away because my grandparents were so elderly and already had a hard time keeping up with a 6 and 9-year-old. We spent a lot of time at the nearby park, the Four Seasons Park or the Sunset Knoll Park. I forget, but this was 1997. My grandmother would do her crossword puzzle while I ran around and played. I remember specifically always asking her to push me on the swings, because they were my favorite as a child. She would get tired out and sit for a while when I went on the slides. It was a fairly busy location, and lots of other children were there on the day in question. I didn't play much with the other kids, though, as I was living with untreated PTSD as a child, and had a very hard time trusting others. After my grandma got tired out, I went to the slides, per usual. I'm a fairly different looking child, as I had bright, long ginger hair. My grandma was a seamstress and made most of my clothes. I have a very large, dark blue eyes. To further elaborate, I also have a neurological disorder diagnosed later in life, and because of it, I have an extremely good memory. I was playing by myself, and I was readjusting my bright pink gloves when two women came up to me. These women were a mother and daughter. They were younger than my mom and grandma, but I can't particularly remember what they looked like. As I was readjusting my gloves, these two women came up to me. They kept calling me Emily, and my name is Rachel. They immediately seemed hurried and told me that it was time to leave. I was confused. Why were they talking to me as if I were the younger woman's daughter? They then were making a point to become exasperated with me. These women were making a show of trying to get me to leave. I kept insisting. I'm not Emily, my name is Rachel. I'm not the girl you were trying to take. They would not stop though. They even tried taking me off the play structure. Becoming more scared now, I told them to go talk to the woman on the bench. She is my nana. I don't know you, I began to cry. They refused to go talk to her though. I was frantic and struggled to get away from their hands. Looking like any child having a tantrum to the average onlooker, other parents were shooting looks of sympathy. I managed to get away with them, then became very loud, angry, and was clearly afraid. You can't take me, I don't know you. Finally, some other kids told their mom and they came over. Let's just go talk to this woman. We can sort this out. She really looks like Emily. She looks exactly like my child. She throws these hissy fits when we have to leave anywhere, the younger woman insisted. I shot glances around the park. There was no little girl my size, not one with strawberry blonde hair as I had, and certainly not one in a frilly dress that was handmade by a professional seamstress. Emily, stop this. We don't have time for this today, said the older one. I started crying, and one of the other moms had gone to alert my grandmother. Come here, sweetie. said the other, who was clearly growing very suspicious of these other women. She took me by the hand. "We'll be right back. I'm gonna go get them," gesturing to Mom 1 and my grandma. As she walked me over, I was sobbing. "You're okay now, Rachel. It's okay," soothed Mom number 2. As we reached my grandmother, I ran into her arms. I recounted the whole encounter to her, which was only 5 to 10 minute interaction. My grandmother looked over to them just to make a shocking discovery. The women were gone and nowhere to be found. I never found out if any other kids were taken in the area around the same time this happened, but I never saw them again in my life. The memories had not plagued me again until recently, as I continued to live a life of traumatic experiences until recently. I've been doing cognitive behavioral therapy when this was uncovered. To this day, I'm called a helicopter mom because I'm extremely protective of my kids and always hovering nearby, especially at the public parks. Number 3. Before I start the story, I'm going to give a brief description of myself. At the time this happened, I was just turning 14. I was 5 feet tall, weighed 90 pounds, and wasn't very strong at all, but I could run like the wind. Now for the actual story. When this happened, Pokemon Go had just been released for about 2 weeks. So, as you'd imagine, there were people playing it everywhere, no matter the time of day and age, if you get my point. For privacy, this is not my friend's name, but let's call him Luke. Anyways, we were out at about 9 p.m. on a Saturday night. He was staying at my house, so we were going to stay out as long as possible until my curfew of 10:30. The reason we were out so late was because we thought we could catch more rare Pokemon like Ghastly and stuff, you know. As we were walking, I noticed this old beat-up brown station wagon. Kinda looked like the one from the first Halloween movie in the Halloween franchise, the one that Michael Myers drives around. Anyways, I noticed that it started to follow us. It's not like the thing was quiet either, so it was kind of obvious. It was getting late, so I got kind of worried, but Luke just blew it off. He was the same age as me, but he was 5'8" and I'd say around 130 pounds at the time. He played soccer, so he was also decently fit. It was nearing the curfew, so I started to head home. My town wasn't the biggest, but my house was about 2 miles away, and some roads we would have to take were pretty offsetting. We started to head back, and sure enough, the station wagon started to follow us. I pointed out to Luke, but when he turned to look, it was gone. I flipped out, and I grabbed his arm and said to hurry up and follow me. We started running towards the main part of town. It was about 3 blocks long and 2 blocks wide. Once we hit the railroad track, I heard the thing's engine. It slowed down as it saw us and slowly stopped next to us. The car reeked with the smell of smoke and alcohol. The exhaust didn't help either with our worn-out breathing. He asked if we needed a ride because we were out of breath. Luke kindly said no, and that we lived only 2 blocks away, which was a lie because we were still a good mile away. The man looked angry after he kept asking us, but we kept saying no. Eventually he just shifted his car out of park and kept driving. I basically gave Luke one of those "I told you" faces, and he just shook his head and suggested we kept moving, which we did. Luke and I were hungry after running, so we decided to stop and grab some McDonald's. Wow, smart us, right? Cram our mouths full of fast food even though we still had a ways to walk. I texted my mom and told her what we were doing, and she said okay and to text her when we'd leave. As we walked into the store, I swear I saw that station wagon outside, but the smell of fresh fries and hamburgers distracted me. We ordered our food and sat down to eat. I noticed my phone was at 30%, so I took out my small bag and pulled my charger out. I was leaning under the table to plug the charger in, and then I smelled the familiar smell, the smoke and alcohol stench. I hurried and looked back up and saw no one there. I went to ask Luke, but he wasn't there. I got up and saw he was talking to the manager about finding hair in his 10-piece chicken McNugget. He walked back and smiled as he showed me he got a free 20-piece. So we sat down to eat. It was time to go, so I picked up my stuff, and as we were leaving, I saw it. The station wagon in the drive-thru. I nudged Luke and he saw it too. We turned and walked back through McDonald's and through the other exit to which led to an alley. On one side there was a dry cleaner, the other was a chain link fence. We walked over to the fence and double checked to see if we could see the station wagon. We couldn't, so we assumed it left. We hopped the fence, and right as we did, we were blinded by the headlights of a car. Then we heard the familiar voice, the old raspy smoker's voice. It was like Luke read my mind, for we split up and ran. Me left, him right. And as I was running, I got the worst cramp and wanted to stop. Damn it, McDonald's. And I just kept pushing myself. Eventually I spotted Luke and I sprinted up to him. We just kept going, but no matter what we did, the car would find us. My house was in sight, but the stench of the fumes of the car were getting closer and closer. And then the car itself. The man got out of his car and started chasing us. He was gaining quickly. Right when we were about to get to my house, I heard a loud thud and heard Luke wince in pain. Shit, he fell. Ever felt that feeling of being so close but yet so far away? Well, that's what was happening. I wanted to yell, but my whole family would be in danger. I was torn on what to do. I saw it as having three options. 1. Risk everyone's life by trying to pick up Luke and get him to my house in time. 2. Risk his life by trying to get to my house and get help in time. Or 3. Risk my life and try to save Luke right then and there. I ruled out number 1. I didn't have enough strength to pick him up and take him to my house in time. And I had to get rid of choice number 2. It was too risky leaving him helpless on the ground. Damn it, I used choice 3. The man was closing in, but I was out of sight. That is when the light bulb went off in my head. I remembered we went out to the woods earlier, so I knew I had my knife in my bag. I threw it down, unzipped it, and grabbed my knife. Thankfully, I had my karambit in there. For those of you who don't know, picture the karambit as a knife, but the blade is like a bird's beak. It was the sharpest knife I had. I took it out of the sheath, and then I saw the man grab Luke's arm. He was too out of breath to yell. It was time to, as said in my favorite movie Zombieland, time to nut up or shut up. I used my last bit of energy to run and slam into the guy at full force. He was on his side. This was my chance. That was when I jabbed my karambit into his gut and then ripped it out. I grabbed Luke and took him inside my house, and I told my parents what was happening. I looked out my window and was shocked at what I saw. The man wasn't there, but there was a pool of blood with a small trail to the neighbor's yard where I forgot my bag. It wasn't there, and I had bandages for if I cut myself in the woods and stuff. To this day, 2 years later, he hasn't been found. There might have been one trace of him since that night, though. Someone says they found his car out of state in Rhode Island, where they claim they saw a man trying to lure a young girl into his old beat-up, disgusting brown station wagon. Number 4. I'm so close. I've got her almost away from the KB toys and out of sight of the electric horsey ride with no tantrum. Deli, her name is Delilah, but I call her Deli Belly, is 3. I swear her terrible toddler years have been extended. If I can get her into the car without being kicked in the face or spit on, I'm gonna treat myself to an ice cream while she naps. If she stays as good as she is right now, walking with me being sweet, we'll both have some after her nap. The lady catches my eyes, just as I see the sliding doors and start to exhale. Her face stops my breath short. I know those eyes. I once had those eyes. When I'm with one of the kids, I see them way more than you'd think. I can always tell when a woman was a mother and has lost her child. There's a deep pain glistening on her lower lid, and her mouth hangs a little open as she gives into the faintest of hopes as she looks over Deli. She must have had a daughter. Maybe her girl even looked like mine. She could almost believe she's seeing her own child again. The hope flickers out, and she bites her lips. When that happens, I usually feel pity, anger, and keep walking. I can't deal with my own pain randomly popping up in my day. I can't think about Rachel every time I see a sad lady in the mall. It's been 8 years, 4 years since I was ready to start over and have another. I still can't confront what was taken away from me, but today I feel something deeper than pity. I want to make her smile. I think about the traffic. I look behind me to gauge the flow of people heading to the parking lot, and it's not optimistic. But I walk over to the bench she's on anyways, pretending I need to look for my keys. I want to let this woman have a moment. I let go of Deli's hand. A bold move so close to the toy store, but I know my little girl is fascinated by strangers. Sure enough, I peek at her and see her giving this lady a shy smile. The lady is beaming now. Her eyes are wet and she gives Deli a little finger wave. The desire is so strong on her face that I feel a deep, dark instinct to take Deli's hand again. Something feels very wrong. I pretend to remember. My keys are already in my hand next to Deli's stuffed toys and sling my purse back on as quickly as I can, because I can feel it in my gut. The lady is beginning to make a sound, low and high at the same time. Her expression has changed to something aggressive and confused. She glances towards the toy shop, and her eyes suddenly dry and she begins to stand. I take a hurried step backwards and ignore Deli's tug and protest when I pull her away, turn, and move quickly to the door. I don't look behind me, but I can hear a commotion beginning. Something within me that I try to ignore says, run. There are screams now. They are unintelligible cries of words and wet noises, and I swing Deli into my arms and move as fast as I can. Her face is over my shoulder, and she can see what I can't. Oh God, I don't ever want to think about what she saw or felt, because I was too cowardly to look myself, not even once. I got her in the car and don't even buckle her into her new booster seat. I drive like a madman out of the lot and stop at the first place I see to park, a gas station. My heart is exploding. Delilah is sobbing. I have no idea how close behind us the danger is, but I can hear sirens heading towards the mall. I get out and slide open the back door to see Deli against the far window looking towards the noise. I pull my medkit out of the pouch behind the passenger seat and load a syringe to put Deli down for her nap. She screams a little, but I get her out of her blue jacket and into the red one and finally hand her the little toy she wanted so badly. She calms down and is asleep before I finish adjusting the wig and get her strapped in. I drive at the exact speed limit until I'm across the border. I exhale. When she wakes up, we're both gonna have some ice cream this time.